Helps to turn the mic on. Well, morning, everybody. Welcome to Coffee Hour. It's not without its problems here on Tuesday. Not my fault. I can't help it. EV Mux is our host software that we use. And clearly it was not working like it's supposed to. So anyway, sorry for the delay and the lesson. Whether you're here or not, we're recording the lesson for people to listen to in the future anyway, so it doesn't matter. So if you've moseyed on and you're not listening to us this morning, that's fine too. Again, we don't do this for the clicks and we don't do this for the number of people. We really don't care. It's really for the recording in order to be able to get the recording for the lesson. So that's what it's mainly about. So, but it means I don't have as many intros, right? So we'll just get right into today's lesson. So today's lesson we're picking up. We're going to be talking about spas and hot tubs in today's lesson. So if you have any questions about that in the comments, please feel free to ask them. But we're gonna cover the spas and hot tubs in this episode, and hopefully that will. And I'll have to reconnect some things as I go to it, because again, when the system doesn't work, it drops everything. So, and I didn't have time to reconnect everything. So. Again, if you do a show Monday through Friday, it is what it is. Good thing I'm not on network TV, because then that would just really suck, but it's all good. All right, let's get into today's lesson. I'm going to get to the lesson, but I'm probably going to have to share my lesson here, so bear with me. Let's see here. There we go. Okay, so this is a lesson we're getting into today. We're going to talk about spas and hot tubs. This is part 4 of Article 680. Okay, you may know a lot. First thing I'll tell you is there is no difference between a spa and a hot tub. Now, a lot of people want to say the spa is something that is built into a pool. So it's an area of the pool that is basically integral to a spa. And that's not necessarily correct. It might have been back in the old days, because in the old days it was called spas. And they were made of teak or cypress or oak, or they were more barrel-ish and all that. But now with the advent of things like acrylics and other types of materials, plastics, okay, a hot tub and a spa are typically be the same thing as far as the National Electrical Code is concerned. Now you can have a hot tub or a spa, again, integral to a pool, means that it's you can go straight from one into the other. Or you can have a separate, self-constructed, self-contained type of hot tub, which is typically going to have filtration, going to have the ability to a heater involved in it to heat the water. It may even have things like mood lighting in it, a sound system. The hot tub that I used to have years ago had a surround sound system in it that actually the speakers were below the water. So it would actually pump the music through the water. That was pretty cool. But I would have a hot tub over a pool for me any day. But again, not a whole lot difference between a spa and a hot tub. Now, there is a difference. For example, there is a difference in something like when you have a hydromassage bathtub. Now, hydromassage bathtub typically is in your dwelling, and you're going to drain the water after every use. A hot tub or spa is typically not the case. You're going to put chemicals in it. You're going to keep the water in there. You're not going to drain it after every use. Okay, so that is another kind of a difference between a hydromassage. Now, both of them offers therapeutic relief, but at the end of the day, just think of hot tubs or spas as manufactured or fabricated together that provides heat, circulating water, possibly mood lighting, stereo or some type of music integral into it. All these different types of things can be the difference, right? Could have little waterfalls going over into it, things like that. You're typically not going to have that in a hydro massage bathtub. So you may hear companies that create like Jacuzzi. Jacuzzi typically produces the hot tubs and spas, but they're not precluded from producing something like a hydromassage bathtub. And the difference is, if you have a bathtub in your home where you drain the water after every use, but it has circulation system or circulating pump, then that's a hydromassage bathtub. Now that's got totally separate rules that you have to follow in 680 than what you would follow here in Part 4 of the National Electrical Code. Okay, so that's the key fundamental difference in what you're dealing with. Now we can go look at the lesson here and just kind of read it to get a better understanding. It says, what's the difference between a hot tub and a spa? In reality, there is no difference. Many years ago, hot tubs were constructed of wood, such as redwood, teak, cypress, oak, those type of things. Along came the advancements of acrylics, and you could blow mold them. There were fiberglass molds, other synthetic type of products that really make the use of wood more nostalgic than actually reality. Everything today is pretty much an acrylic or something plastic type of scenario. The term spa was created at that point. Today, both names, as far as the National Electrical Code is concerned, both are used pretty interchangeably. Okay, so there's not much difference in that. Now, there are therapeutic jets that create, again, swirling water. You have filtration systems, you have mood lighting, you have sound systems, you have waterfalls. You have all these things that create the hot tub or spa. Okay. And again, typically a hot tub or spa are not, again, designed to drain the water. Okay. They're designed to leave the water in it, and you're just going to treat it with chemicals. This is an example right here of commercially purchased hot tub or spa. Okay. And this is similar to the one that I had years ago. And, I'm not interested in getting another one. But at the time, it was great when I was younger. The hot tub was awesome, that type of thing. All right, we're going to go look at the NEC. Now, I'm going to have to reconfigure this so that y'all can see it, because we're going to go over here. There you go. Now it looks like it actually came up, so that's good. All right, so here's what we've got here. We're in Part 4. Part 4 says permanently installed and self-contained spas and hot tubs and permanently installed immersion pools. Okay. All right, we're going to focus really on the hot tubs and spas. That's our main concept that we're focusing on today. All right, first and foremost, 680.40 general. It says electrical installations for spas and hot tubs shall comply with the provisions of Part 1. So if you remember, we have to meet all of the provisions of Part 1 that we talked about, the maintenance disconnect, all that stuff that was in Part 1. So Part 1 of 680 is very much germane here, okay? Very much in play. But then it says, and Part 4 of this article. So when you're dealing in Part 4, anything that's in Part 1 is going to be applicable. Anything, obviously, we're here in Part 4 is going to be applicable as well, okay? So keep that in mind. All right, 680.41, location of other equipment. Okay, so we have other things that are required and the location for them. For example, emergency switches for spas and hot tubs. Okay, now, for other than one family dwellings. So you have a maintenance disconnect requirement, okay, for the one family dwellings, the normal application. But for anything other than a one family dwelling, for example, two family dwellings that may be sharing a spa, multi-family dwellings, all this type of stuff, they have some different rules when it comes to needing another form of disconnect. And that is an emergency switch, typically like a mushroom type switch is what you typically would run into, right? So it says for other than one family dwelling, so not your normal house. No, you're putting a hot tub on there. You're still going to have the maintenance disconnect. The switch is going to be at least 5 feet away from the spa. You get it. But it says you have to have an emergency switch. It says a clearly labeled emergency shutoff or control switch for the purpose of stopping the motors that provide power to the recirculating system and jet system shall be installed at a point readily accessible to the user and not less than 5 feet away, adjacent to and within sight of the spa and hot tub. Okay, so not less than 5 feet away, so it's got to be at least 5 feet away. It has to be labeled as emergency switch, and it has to be obviously within sight of the spa and hot tub. Again, this is for other than one family. Okay, important. Two family, sharing a spa, okay, then they're going to have this emergency shutoff, okay? That type of scenario. But one family dwellings, not required to have the emergency. But you still have to meet the requirements of Part 1, and Part 1 is going to have the maintenance disconnect requirement, okay? So keep that in mind. Next is B, it says equipment exceeding the low voltage contact limit. All right, so except for the self-contained spa and hot tub itself, equipment with ratings exceeding the low voltage contact limit shall be located at least 5 feet horizontally from the inside wall of the spa or hot tub, unless separated from the spa or hot tub by a solid fence, wall, or other permanent barrier. So again, except for the spa itself, which is probably going to have some low voltage applications in it for the lighting and controls, probably through a transformer that's built into the hot tub, the self-contained unit. Other than that, any other equipment with a rating that exceeds that low voltage contact limit, which this, by the way, is a defined term. It is in Article 100 of the National Electrical Code. We're in the 2023 edition, so there is a definition of that. So anything that exceeds that low voltage contact limit, if it shall be located 5 feet horizontally from the inside wall of the spa or hot tub, okay? Unless there's a wall or a barrier or something there that would make separation unnecessary. In other words, it equates to a reach, right? A reach of at least 5 foot reach, okay? Does that make sense? I hope so. All right. Let's go on to 680.42. This is the outdoor installation. So this is specifically for outdoor installs right now. So we got the general rules here. We covered it in 680.40. We understand it, what can be near it. We got it. So now we're moving specifically to the hot tub or spa that's installed outdoors. Not indoors yet, outdoors, okay? So we want to make sure that we follow what that rule says. So let's go back to the code. Outdoor, it says a spa or hot tub installed outdoors, okay, shall comply with the provisions of Part 1, all right? All right, so Part 1, which is the general provisions in 680. And notice here it says, and Part 2 of this article. So it's going to follow outdoors. It's going to follow the same specific rules, right, as a permanent installed pool, all right? So it's going to follow Part 1, the general. It's going to also Part 2, okay, the permanent installation, but it says except as permitted in 680.42a, which is this, and B, which is the bonding requirement, okay? So, and that would otherwise apply to pools installed outdoors. So, long and short is don't forget, if you're doing a hot tub or spa and it's outdoors, you can't forget that you got your general rules in Part 1, that's your maintenance disconnect, but also in all the rules in Part 2, you still have to follow. So you have to treat it like a permanently installed pool, except when it comes to flexible connections to supply power to the hot tub and the equipotential bonding. That changes for the hot tub, okay? So, and this is, again, the 2023 edition of the NEC, okay? All right, now my count shows that there's only 3 people here. So either it's maybe not going out properly to all of the channels. EVMux may still be having an issue somewhere. And they say they never have any issues because it's cloud-based. I disagree. I have issues with them all the time. Okay, so you may be watching and it's just not keeping count, that type of thing. So if you're here, let me know. That way we'll keep it. If not, I'll kill it and we'll just get rid of it. Don't break my heart. I like teaching, but, All right, so there we go. So let's look at each one of these. So we have to remember that we're going to follow Part 2 and Part 1 for these outdoor spas and hot tubs. Now, these are the ones so this is a permissive rule. So I could ignore this and I could do equipotential bonding around the hot tub. I could do all of that, but I get permissive applications. There's certain things I can do. And that's what we're talking here. It says, okay, well, flexible connections. It says a listed packaged spa or hot tub, okay, it means you buy it self-contained. It has the onboard power. It has everything, the pump, the filtration, everything. So it's a package deal. Again, defined what a packaged spa is. It comes with everything, okay? It says listed packaged spas and hot tubs equipment assemblies or a self-contained spa or hot tub. All right, so this might be listed packaged. So this might be a componentary hot tub or spa that you put together, or it might, or mount into something where you put the shell part in it, and then you have the other pieces that are separate. They're packaged and they connect to it, and you made them together from maybe something that would be in a decking system or something like that. You know, two pieces, maybe for remote power plant or something like that, or putting the pumps remote. Whereas the self-contained, everything is within the framework. Everything is within the shell. Okay. All right. It says for that situation, it says or self-contained spas or hot tubs utilizing a factory installed or assembled control panel or panel board shall be permitted to use flexible connections as covered in 680.42A1 and A2. Okay, so we have some flexibility allowances here. Okay, here's the first one, flexible conduit. It says flexible, liquid-tight flexible metal conduit or liquid-tight flexible non-metallic conduit shall be permitted. Okay, this is where you need the flexible connection. Okay. Also, cord and plug. It says cord and plug connections with a cord no longer than 15 feet shall be permitted if it's GFCI protected. Okay. So here, because of how these spas are made, self-contained, I'm able to use a cord, limited length. Typically, it's probably going to be factory supplied, but you can do a cord, plug, or you can do the, and usually I usually only see the cord and plug ones on the ones that are 120 volt, that type of thing. But again, it allows you to have it as long as a cord's not more than 15 feet. Again, it's all part of the listing of the spa or hot tub. But a lot of times for flexibility on where you're putting this spa or hot tub and getting it over into it, that typically you'll run a normal raceway to a point where you'll transition over to liquid tight flexible metal conduit or liquid tight flexible non-metallic conduit in order to facilitate the point from A to B to get up into the unit. And that's okay. It's allowing you for those where you need the flexibility that you can do that. Okay. All right. So then that's that part. Again, so we're still outside. Okay. We're still an outside spa and hot tub. So the next one will be the bonding. All right, so let's talk about this bonding again, because again, remember it said that the spa and hot tubs to be just like part 1 and part 2, and obviously part 2 is where we have 680.26. We went over that yesterday, the equipotential bonding and all that requirement. Well, it's a little more complicated when you're doing it on a hot tub and spa because you're thinking, well, how do I do everything the same way I would with a permanent installed pool? So it says, okay, you know what? You're permitted to do this. So here's the bonding provision. It says, bonding by metal-to-metal mounting on a common frame or base shall be permitted. Okay, so it comes made up with all the components mounted on the frame inside of the actual self-contained spa and hot tub, whatever. It's all considered to be bonded metal-to-metal mounting. The motor is sitting in a frame. The heater is probably sitting in a frame. And maybe you have an inline sanitation. Maybe it's a ozone system. Mine used to have an ozone system, all built into it, right? Okay. All of that's considered bonded together. It says the metal bands or hoops used to secure wood staves shall not be required to be bonded as required in 680.26. So if you have the old wood style, stave style, that's actually look like a barrel scenario, you don't have to try to bond these bands, okay? Even if they're going to be more than 4 inches and they're like a fitting, no, you don't need to try to bond each one of these little bands if you're doing that wood style. I don't know that I've ever seen any of those anymore, you know? I mean, maybe old school style, but I think majority of the time there's going to be the acrylic type or the self-contained spa or hot tub. So we're not going to see any of that type of stuff. But it just reassures you that all the frame components inside of it are going to be bonded together. And most of the manufacturers will take care of internal bonding. It's not something that you're going to do to the framework if it's a self-contained spa or hot tub. You're not Most of that's going to be done within itself. You're buying a self-contained unit and just simply bringing power to it, okay? All right, so now it's talking about the equipotential bonding here. It says the equipotential bonding of the perimeter surface in accordance with 680.26b2. Okay, that's the perimeter bond. Okay, that's, remember, B2 is the 3-foot perimeter when it comes to a permanently installed pool. It says the equipotential bonding of perimeter surfaces in accordance with 680.26b2 shall not be required to be provided for spas and hot tubs where all the following conditions apply. Okay, so remember when it said follow part 1 and part 2? Then you've got the equipotential bonding requirement, but it says, you know what? Yeah, you've got to do it and treat it like a permanent pool, but if you follow all of these conditions here, then don't worry about it, okay? Then you don't need the equipotential bonding perimeter requirement. You don't need it. So it says if you follow all of this, then you can ignore it. So what does it say? So what's the first thing? Let's see if you get this on the checklist here. It says number 1 says, the spa or hot tub shall be listed, labeled, and identified as a self-contained spa for above ground use. Okay, so this is not a spa or hot tub that would be designed to go in the ground and you build it around in a patio or a decking and it goes in. So this is, even if you build up a deck and the hot tub is sitting above ground, it just looks like it's built into the deck. It's still above ground, okay? So it has to be the type that is designed, listed, it's usually self-contained. It's not designed to go in the ground. It's an above ground application, okay? So that's the first thing. You buy it and it is listed, labeled, and identified as a self-contained spa, and it's above ground use only, okay? So look at the listing. Now, typically this will be pretty evident because it'll have a side panel that's accesses, that type of thing, and it really wouldn't be accessible if you did put it below the ground, okay? They make specific compartmentalized models that are designed for you to put the pumps, have them removed remotely, and be able to be away, you pipe them away. But these are usually under the same self-contained. Everything's under the framework, okay? So that's the first caveat. Next, it says the spa or hot tub shall not be identified as suitable only for indoor use. So you have to make sure that this is not a hot tub or spa that can only be used indoors. I tell you, most of the hot tubs and spas that I've ever seen would not say for indoor use only, but I'm sure they're out there. They wouldn't say this if there wasn't some available only for an indoor use application, okay? So you have to make sure that it's not suitable for indoor use only, okay? Next, number 3, it says, the installation shall be in accordance with the manufacturer's instructions and shall be located on or above grade. So on or above grade, and this is where the AHJ might say, can I see the installation instructions for this spa or hot tub, only to make sure, 1, that it is designed for not indoor use only, and 2, to make sure there are any other instructions that are specific to this hot tub or spa. So again, don't chuck it. Obviously, you're going to save the manual for your customer, but you want to make sure you don't chuck it. You want to make sure that you do provide it. That type of thing. All right, so that's the other caveat. And then number 4 says the top rim of the spa or hot tub, okay, so that's the very top, shall be at least 28 inches above all perimeter surfaces that are within 30 inches. So 30 inches around the top of this hot tub or spa. Okay, so if we were to go back to the lesson, so right here. Okay, so this is the top right here. In all directions from this top, okay, from the top rim, okay, in all direction horizontally, okay, it shall be at least what? 28 inches above any surface. Okay, so if this one was sunk into the ground and it's not supposed to be, then if it doesn't meet the 28 inches above the perimeter right here to the surface that goes out 30 inches horizontally in all directions, then it would not be compliant, and you'd have to put in the equipotential bonding grid. That's all it's saying. Okay, so in this case, we'll see how we're going to address these steps real quick, because obviously that may be less than 28 inches. So I don't know. Let's see what goes on here. So all directions, keeping things away from the spa, and that assures that it's up above Okay, so that when somebody steps out of it, there is a distinct moment where they step out and onto the surface, and there's a transition. And so chances are you're not going to be in contact with both the water and as you're getting out if it's above 28 inches. Okay. All right, so that's the concept here. So let's get back to the code. All right, so that's the first part. Next, it says the height of non-conductive external steps. Okay. The height of the non-conductive external steps, that means that maybe they're made out of wood, teak wood, or whatever the wood, that type of thing, or like a plastic. Non-conductive external steps for entry to and exit from the self-contained spa shall not be used to reduce or increase the rim height of the measurement. Okay, so again, they're not going to reduce it. They're not going to increase it. They're just there to get in and out, so they don't play any role. They're non-conductive, so they're just there. So you're really worrying about the perimeter out, okay, out around the pool, 30 inches out, okay, and you have to make sure that you're at least 28 inches from the top rim down, all directions, out 30 inches. And the steps that are non-conductive are not going to play a role in reducing that or increasing it. So in other words, you've got clearance everywhere else, but somebody slides the steps there, and then all of a sudden they're like, oh, wait a minute, now you're only 26 inches. No, the steps aren't going to reduce it. Okay, it's still fine, okay, all around it, okay? All right, let's go back into the code. So now we're talking about the underwater luminaires. Typically, these are built into the hot tub or spa. They usually will hit a transformer inside of the actual pool unit, maybe a control panel that's underneath the housing, and you'll have a little control panel on the side of your hot tub and spa. But it does remind us that the wiring for the underwater luminaire shall comply with 680.23 or 680.33. Okay, so 680.23 is talking about underwater luminaires. Okay, and it has all these normal operations. Okay, this is typically, it'll probably be a transformer and power supply that's supplied by a unit underneath it. So again, GFCI protection, all that type of stuff, that's going to all automatically be inherent. And .33 is talking about underwater luminaires if installed. Okay, this is the same requirement that would be for like a storable pool or storable hot tubs. Okay, all right. So this is pretty much going to be already taken care of. So it's usually going to be built into the manufacturing of the hot tub and spa. There's really nothing that you need to do about underwater luminaires when it comes to these packaged or self-contained hot tubs or spas. So it's here, but it's really nothing you're going to concern yourself with too much. All right, now, shifting. What about indoor installations? So the outdoor is pretty simple, right? So just as a recap summary, outdoor, follow the rules of part 1, part 2, and it does require equipotential bonding grid around the spa or hot tub unless you meet the caveats. If you meet all the caveats, then you get to ignore putting that perimeter. If you don't meet all the caveats, then you're going to have to install the perimeter equipotential bonding grid just like you did if it's a pool. Now, obviously, if you had to do the grid around it, that you're not going to connect it at all 4 corners because that's obviously non-conductive shell, which is a hot tub, probably acrylic or plastic or something like that. So don't have to do that, but you still have the perimeter bond. And you also have to remember things that are what? Things that are within 5 feet of the inside wall of it, because it is referring you back to part 2. So you still have to follow those type of rules unless you're able to remove the need for the perimeter bond, that type of thing. And if you don't have a need for the perimeter bond, then obviously there's nothing else that you're going to be able to bond to anything because you wouldn't have the requirement for the perimeter bond. Makes sense? Okay. All right. So and you already know you can't have switches within 5 feet. You already know the maintenance disconnect can't be within 5 feet. You must have a maintenance disconnect, by the way, because that's in part 1. You don't need an emergency switch unless it's other than a 1-family dwelling. If you're doing it for commercial applications or a 2-family dwelling or a multi-family dwelling and the hot tub is available to everybody, then you're going to put an emergency disconnect as well. Most of the time, it's just like a mushroom or something that will just instantly be able to hit it. That also has to be 5 feet away. unless it's separated by a permanent barrier that would require a reach of equivalent to 5 feet. So you're going to put that away. Again, emergency disconnect or emergency switch does not have to be applied to a single family dwelling. That only is to other than single family dwellings. Okay, important distinction. All right, let's get back to the indoor unit. All right, so it says a spa or hot tub installed indoors shall comply with the provisions of Part 1 and Part 2. Okay, so still having to meet both the requirements of 680 in Part 1 and the provisions of what? The provisions of the Part 2. Also should go without mention. It should be go without mentioning that I should say this. In the outdoor one, remember when it said Part 1 and Part 2, you still also have the other requirements that are in Part 2, like receptacles. Okay, and all those rules in 680.22 and 23, you still have those distance requirements, 6 feet. You have to meet all those general requirements. Okay, because it tells you have to meet Part 1 and Part 2. The only things that it gave you some reprieve was for flexible connections and a reprieve when it came to equipotential bonding grid, if you met those conditions. Other than that, you still have to meet everything in Part 2, as if it was a permanently installed pool, okay? You're not going to be draining this thing. This thing's going to stay there like a pool, okay? All right. Now, if you're like me, there's going to be certain times when you best drain that damn thing, but I'm just saying, most of the time it's chemicals and it could go months without draining any water, okay? All right. So treat it like a pool. All right, so there we go. So now indoors, same thing. Got to meet Part 1 and Part 2 of this article, except as modified by this section. So treat it like a pool, follow Part 1, but something in here is going to modify it because it's indoors, okay? And here it says, because it's indoors, it says, except as modified by this section and shall be connected by the wiring methods of Chapter 3. Why is that an important statement? Why does that mean anything? Because it's indoors. Remember, if the hot tub and spa is outdoors, just like with the permanently installed pool, and you're going to be running circuits to it, you have to have an insulated equipment ground. It would have to be a minimum of 12. You got to follow all of the rules as if it was a permanently installed pool. So you'd have to use the wiring methods outside that would be the same if you were installing a permanently installed pool. Does that make sense? But since we're doing it inside, then you know what? I can run any of the Chapter 3 wiring methods I want. And that would be even something like an SER if I wanted, right? It's not outdoors. It's indoors. So it's going to allow me to run any of the wiring methods of Chapter 3 that I want to run. It's indoors, for goodness sakes. Remember what we said the other day about transitioning? I could run SER, let's say inside, and then had a junction box and changed over. And then the moment I went outside to a panel, then I would have to have the insulated equipment ground. But inside, I would not. It's covered. It's fine. It's inside of a sheathing. So that's SER is a covered equipment ground. So we're okay there, right? Same thing here. As long as I'm inside the structure, inside of a building, okay? All right, so let's go back to look at that. All right. Now, there's some exceptions here. Exception number 1, exception number 2. Okay, this is an exception to this statement. It says, exception number 1, it says listed spas and hot tubs packaged units rated 20 amperes or less shall be permitted to be cord and plug connected to facilitate the removal and disconnect of the unit for maintenance and repair. So this says that it has to be Chapter 3 wiring methods, which obviously cord and plug does not fall under. However, if it's a listed unit, you buy it, it is rated 20 amperes or less, it's simply a plug-in style model, then in this scenario, I am okay to do that, right? I can have it. It does not have to be a Chapter 3 wiring method. It can be cord and plug. You buy them this way, folks. You're not making it this way. You're buying it that way, okay? And it'll have a cord on it for that. Next, exception number 2 says, well, the equipotential bonding requirements for perimeter surfaces in 680-26B2 shall not apply to the listed self-contained spa hut tub installed above a finished floor. Okay? So if you're installing it indoors above a finished floor, okay, you're taking the hot tub and you're putting it on a finished floor. Okay, you're just saying, hey, I'd like a hot tub. My house is already built. Hey, put one on the floor. Okay, if that's the case, no equipotential bonding is required. That's the exception. Okay, don't have to meet that requirement. In other words, that is saying you can ignore the requirements in Part 2 of 680 because it is listed self-contained. Now, if it's not a listed self-contained, let's say it's a packaged unit that comes with, that goes in the ground, in the concrete, in the floor. It's a fancy dancy one. It's mounted in the floor in your bathroom. So it's part of the construction. That's different. That is different than it would be a listed self-contained like the one we saw in the picture where you just simply buy it from Costco or you order it from somebody and it just comes and you're an electrician, you wire it up. That's it. That's self-contained. Totally different than a packaged unit, which may come with separate components that get connected together, but that allows the pumps to be maybe somewhere else so that you can take this unit and put it in the ground or semi-sink it or do something with it, okay? Totally different. In order to get away from the equipotential bonding indoor hot tub and spa, it has to be placed on finished surface, okay? Whatever your finished is, tile floor, whatever. It can be stained concrete, finished floor. It could be on a wood floor, whatever you want it, okay? Then it does not need to have the equipotential bonding. Indoors, indoor unit, okay? All right, now, so that's the indoor. So now let's talk about receptacles. All right, so it says receptacles. It says at least one 125 volt, 15 or 20 amp receptacle on the general purpose branch circuits. That means you don't have to do anything special. This could be one of the receptacles, let's say, that is already there due to your wall spacing. Maybe you have a 210.52A, you know, you're spacing receptacles 6 feet from a doorway and then every 12 feet so that no point along the wall line is more than 6 feet from a receptacle. That's meeting the wall space requirement. But hey, guess what? You still have one there, and that one is not closer than 6 feet from the hot tub or spa, but it's not exceeding 10 feet from the inside wall of the spa. So it's all about the placement. So it can't be closer than 6, right? But it's not further than 10, then I need to have at least one receptacle. Well, that is probably already there due to where you're putting it in the room. But it's important that you realize if you have a big room and you're putting one of these spas in there or hot tub in there, that you're still required to have a receptacle. It's got to be at least 6 feet away, right? Okay, so not less than 6 feet and not more than 10 feet. So does that mean it may force you to add a receptacle? Yeah, it might. It might, depending on how big this room is. And a lot of people lose sight of that because with the Part 2 in the general one for the outdoor, remember, it follows the same rules. No closer than 6 feet and no further than 20 feet, okay? That's outdoors. Indoors, it says, well, okay, I'll let you put it. I need to have at least one 15 or 20 amp receptacle. It can't be closer than 6, but guess what? It can't be further than 10 feet away. Okay? That type of thing. Okay? All right. So that's the rules you have for that. So again, probably something that is missed quite a bit in the installation. Okay? All right. So let's see that. So there you go. So now the location. So all receptacles. Okay, so this is at least one statement right here. Then it says, all receptacles shall be located at least 6 feet, measured horizontally from the inside wall of the spa or hot tub. So that's, again, no-brainer. So other than the one that's required there off of a general purpose branch circuit, nothing special, no dedicated circuit, no individual branch circuit. It could be one of the ones that are already there. But in general, no receptacle, wherever you're going to put this spa at or hot tub at, nowhere. It cannot be within 6 feet from the inside walls of the spa or hot tub to a receptacle, period. So again, placement of this unit, placement of this hot tub is extremely important, okay? Keep it away from the hot tubs, okay? Number 2, it says ground fault circuit interrupter, GFCI, and special purpose ground fault circuit interrupters, SPGFCI, protection for receptacle, general. It says all receptacles rated 125 volts through 250 volts, 60 amps or less. So there's your caveat. So it's going to be, and this is a receptacle rating, by the way. So it's not branch circuit. This is for the receptacles. So 120 volts is a NEMA rating for a receptacle, and 250 volts is a NEMA rating for a 240 volt application, okay? So it says all receptacles rated 125 volts through 250 volts that are 60 amps or less, located within 10 feet of the inside wall of the spa or hot tub, shall have GFCI protection complying with 680.5B or SP GFCI protection complying with 680.5C. So B, by the way, is 150 volts or less. This is just a typical Class A GFCI, okay? So if you're dealing with 150 volts to ground or less, that'd be your 120, 240 volt applications. That'd be any of your spas that are supplied by, let's say, the 120 volt loads, things like that. Okay, that's going to have GFCI protection. Now, the 680.5C, that is your special purpose ones. So that is above 150 volts to ground. So those would be provided by an SP GFCI protection, and those are not to exceed 20 milliamps ground fault trip current. So typically what we're going to see on most of the hot tubs that we deal with, folks, other than commercial applications, what we're probably going to deal with is 120, 240 volt applications. And a 120, 240 volt, it is leg to leg. It's all one phase. Leg to leg, any one of those to ground is going to be 120 volts. So obviously that's going to fall into a Class A GFCI for these normal applications, right? Not the special purpose, okay? Where you'd run into that is probably for more of a commercial grade hot tubs and spas, or something that's in, let's say, like a resort or something like that. So again, that's special purpose. So we're talking normal, regular GFCIs, the Class A version. Now remember, they come in Class A, B, C, D, E, F. A and B are typical. The A is a typical Class A. It's 4 to 6 milliamps, excuse me. B is going to be up to like 20 or 30 milliamps. And then C, D, and E, all those type of things, they're going to be special purpose. They're typically for use with higher voltage classes. Does it make sense? But you'll have applications where you may need that. And hopefully the design professionals know which is which and they call them out. Okay. All right. Let's get back to, whoops, wrong button. All right, there we go. All right, so any of those receptacles installed within 10 feet, okay, not closer than 6 feet, but within 10 feet, have to have this GFCI protection. Next, protection spa or hot tub supply receptacle. Okay, so the receptacle that provides power for a hot tub or spa or hot tub shall not exceed 150 volts to ground and shall be GFCI protected. So if we have the hot tub or spa that has a supply cord on it with a cord and plug connection, then typically these are typically going to be not more than 150 volts to ground, whether it's 120 or 240. Okay, so they're going to have GFCI protection, and it's going to be required. And that would be the supply receptacle and cord and plug that connects into it. Okay. Now, measurements. How do we measure all these 6 feet? How do we measure these 10 feet? How do we measure all this stuff? Well, we have rules for measurement. Okay. So the rules for this measurement is, how do we determine this? Well, it says, in determining the measurements in this section, addressing receptacle spacing, the distance to be measured shall be the shortest path the supply cord of an appliance connected to the receptacle would follow without piercing the floor, the wall, the ceiling, a doorway with a hinge, or sliding door, window, opening, or other effective permanent barrier. Okay? So it's basically as the crow flies. So again, if I have a hot tub or spa here, and I have a receptacle that's on the inside, say it's closer to a door, and on the inside of the door I have a receptacle, yes, it's within that 10 feet of the hot tub or spa, but the cord would have to go through the doorway to get to it. That doorway breaks the measurement. So again, you wouldn't have to have GFCI on the receptacle that's just inside the porch, the inside the dwelling, right? But if there was one mounted on the outside of it, it has to be at least 6 feet away from the spa or hot tub and not more than 10 feet away. Any receptacle that's within 10 feet is going to have to be GFCI protected anyway. So again, this is all it's saying. How do you measure it? Basically, it's just like you straight line. You don't follow the contours. You just straight as if the cord was being plugged in and you're pulling it straight to wherever you need to go. That's how you make the measurement. You don't go over and around in this straight line. Boom, boom, okay? All right, now, what's next? Well, let's talk about what happens when you do some of the lighting, right? Let's talk about, let's say lighting gets installed, luminaires that installed. Okay, so let's go back to the lesson really quickly and say, all right, so now we're going to talk about installing of luminaires, lighting outlets, and ceiling suspended paddle fans. Very similar to what we saw in pools, okay? So as you'll see right here, it says luminaires, lighting outlets, and ceiling suspended paddle fans above a spa or hot tub and within 5 feet measured from the inside wall of the spa or hot tub. So again, so this is lighting outlets, luminaires, and ceiling suspended paddle fans that are above it. Okay, everybody likes a nice little fan above their hot tub, right? Cools them off. Up above the water, you're cool. Below the water, you're warm. They love that stuff. So again, so we have some restrictions here, just like we saw with pools outside. We have our own restrictions here. All right. So, and this zone extends out 5 feet all the way around your hot tub. Okay. So think of it this way. So it goes out 5 feet. And then you got your height requirements above it. So let's look at here. Say, all right. So first, let's kind of look at it. We'll go and look at the code first before we look at the lesson. Here's your elevation. All right. So it says luminaires except covered in 680.43b2, which down here is underwater applications. So that has its own requirements that already gets taken care of by the hot tub or spa. Unless you're building one, let's say, into a pool and you have a separate area that's a hot tub or spa, it may have a wet niche in there or something because it's integral to the pool. Not so much for a fabricated from a factory, but if it's actually a spa or hot tub that's maybe built into the Gunite pool structure and you have a separate hot tub or spa, then you have more critically, you got to follow the rules in 680.23 as if it was the same for a permanently installed pool, right? But most of the time, those are packaged already in it, and you don't really have to do anything as part of the listed pool. But that's different. So let's talk about, so this is, other than those that we just saw, okay, it says lighting outlets and ceiling suspended paddle fans located over the hot tub or spa or within 5 feet from the inside wall of the spa and hot tub shall comply with the clearances specified in 480.43b1a, b1b, and b1c above the maximum water level. The maximum water level is the point where it could just flow out of the hot tub. So you're going to go to the very top of the rim, okay? Next, so here's the first one. A says, without GFCI. Okay, so this is the one that people don't realize. They're saying, what? You mean I can actually install a ceiling fan or lighting outlets or luminaires without GFCI? Okay, it says, all right, look, without GFCI, it says, where no GFCI protection is provided, the mounting height shall not be less than 12 feet. And it doesn't come with an illustration, but you get the point. All right, so if it doesn't have GFCI protection on it, then you have to be above 12 feet, okay? So it doesn't mean you can't, but if you're above it or you're out 5 feet above it, anywhere, you can put it up there without GFCI protection, but it's got to be above 12 feet. So whether you're above the hot tub or spa or you're above the 5-foot horizontal plane, then it has to be up 12 feet. And once you get over 12 feet, if you want to put a light up there or you want to put a ceiling fan up there, it's kind of pointless that high. Ceiling fan's not going to do anything up that high, by the way. I'm just saying, maybe for looks. But you get that high, then you don't have to worry about it. Now, I have seen this. I went to a resort many years ago, and they had these hot tubs in this room, and then it has had a peak, and they had some fans really up high. Well, those fans up really high, they were above 12 feet above the water, the top maximum water level of these spas and hot tubs. So they wouldn't have required GFCI. There's no way you could get to it. There's no way you could touch it. So it's pointless. Okay, so that's what it's saying. But probably not practical for me and you, because I don't know how many of you are going to put a spa somewhere indoors that's got a freaking ceiling that high that you would have. Like now, This makes sense for things like where you have peaks that maybe has some luminaires in it, that they're going to be higher than 12 feet above. Maybe that's just, recessed cans that are built up into the slope, for aesthetic looks. Okay, makes sense. No GFCI is required for that type of application. All right, why would you? Right? Nobody's going to get to them. Nobody's going to reach them. All right, so again, mounting height of not less than 12 feet, then no GFCI is required. Now, with GFCI, okay, remember, this is for installing these locations that it's talking about. It says with GFCI, it says where GFCI protection is provided, the mounting height shall be permitted to be not less than 7'6". So if I want to put a ceiling fan or I want to put lighting outlets, that type of thing, I'm perfectly fine above the hot tub or spa, above it and out 5 feet from it and up. I would be okay to go up to, as long as I put the ceiling fan or the luminaires or lighting outlet above 7'6". So if it's above 7'6" or higher, and I GFCI protect it, then I can drop from the 12 down to 7'6", okay? Not less than 7'6". So if I want to come below 12 feet, then I'm going to have to GFCI protect it, but I still can't come lower than 7'6". So I still have a height limit. So that makes up that distance between 7'6" and 12 feet. Yes, I can have something in there, but it has to be GFCI protected, okay? All right. Makes sense. Now, what if I want to go below 7'6"? Okay, I'm location restricted, let's say. All right, so if I want to go below 7'6", it says luminaires meeting the requirements of items 1 or 2. So meeting item 1 or 2, that's these down here, and protected by ground fault circuit interrupters shall be permitted to be installed less than 7'6" over a spa or hot tub. All right, provided I meet these caveats here. Now, you will notice something, whether it's not a nuance or not, but you notice this says luminaires. This doesn't necessarily say ceiling fan, okay? This says luminaires. A ceiling fan, suspended paddle fan, is not a luminaire, okay? So this one right here, these two are fine for both lighting outlets, ceiling suspended panel fans. But when you get down here below 7'6", yeah, I don't see any reference in here about the ceiling suspended paddle fans, okay? I'm just saying. LeBron James would step up in his hot tub if it was below 7'6" and would cut his head off or something. Although I think I saw a episode of Mythbusters, and a ceiling fan it's not going to decapitate anybody, just in case, disclaimer, that thing. But I don't see any permission to be able to install below 7'6" for a ceiling fan. But I do see we have provisions to install a luminaire below 7'6". So let's see what the code says about that. All right, so it says, all right, so again, this is over a spa or hot tub. It says, okay. Now, granted, this is over a spa or hot tub, okay? All right, so this is a reduction over. It says recessed luminaires, okay, with a glass or plastic lens, non-metallic or electrically isolated metal trim. And that'd be like a metal trim that has, let's say, a grommet or something that isolates the trim away. It's not touching. It's not, metal to metal, and is suitable for use in damp locations. Okay, so I can use a recessed luminaire as long as it has a glass or plastic lens on it. Okay, and it has a non-metallic or electrically isolated metal trim. Usually going to have some kind of grommet or some separator because it is typically, those are going to be suitable for use in damp locations. Okay, so you get that kind of trim. Very common to get those kind of trims inside the shower area in a bathroom, because above the spray area, up there could be considered a damp location, whereas it's subject to direct spray is a wet location. So they make trims, you put a recess, and it's a damp location, you put this trim on it, and it makes it a damp location rated. That type of thing, depending on the trim. And it has a seal grommet around it, that separates it, that type of thing. So that's one. And number two says, because it says, again, one or two, it says a surface-mounted luminaire. So I can mount one on the surface. Doesn't have to be recessed. If it has a glass or plastic globe on it, a non-metallic body, or a metallic body that is isolated from contact and suitable for use in a damp location. Okay, so I don't know about this one, a metallic body isolated from contact. I don't know whether that means that it's coated in something or encapsulated in something, or it's made in a way that you couldn't touch it because of the globe. I don't know. But at any rate, you do have some options here. I think that I would probably never use a surface mounted one in that location because I think that would look tacky. I would probably put some type of recess, whether it's an LED or something in there. But you have options. And remember, this is over a spa or hot tub. Okay? The general rule here says over the spa hot tub or within 5 feet measured from the inside wall. Okay? Then you have these reductions. But here, it's talking about over a spa or hot tub specifically. Okay? Now, you can get into semantics all you want, but I'm literally reading the code. If it says over the spa or hot tub, then it's not incorporating the 5 feet from the inside wall for this allowance. Exactly how I read it. If you want to read it differently, then I think somebody should submit a public input if they think it shouldn't say right here over a spa or hot tub, because that's what it's talking about. Okay? All right. We already covered the underwater. Not a problem. Switches. Any switches, snap switches, light switches, any type of switch at all shall be located at least 5 feet. And this is going to kind of mirror the same requirement for that maintenance disconnect switch. Again, that is going to be 5 feet away at least, right? Measured horizontally 5 feet from the inside wall of the spa or hot tub. So keep those switches away so you cannot hit those or reach out to those while you're sitting in the hot tub or spa, okay? Now, also remember, all of this going on, we're still indoors, okay? We're still indoors, okay? Just so everybody knows, we're still under 43. We had an A, we had a B, we had a C, and now we're at bonding. Now we're talking bonding. We're not necessarily talking equipotential bonding because, again, we see where we didn't have to have that if we met all those requirements. But we still have to bond. We still have bonding requirements we have to meet. And most of this may be taken already into account by the factory bought hot tub or spa or listed package unit or whatever. So it has all these little things. But let's see here. The following parts shall be bonded together. And hopefully this is done within the hot spa or hot tub that you buy internally. You can verify this, but hopefully any metal parts are all bonded together with bonding jumpers and everything inside of it. But this is important because you could have pumps, the ones that are the factory style where you put the part in the house and then you have the pumps are remote. They're somewhere else, that type of scenario. So this is not just for the self-contained units, okay? This is bonding in general for hot tub and spa indoors. So this is important. Number one, all metal fittings within or attached to the spa or hot tub structure. So anything inside of it, all the metal fittings that are connected should all be bonded together. This should take place already. Most of the hot tubs that I see are wood framed inside, but all of the metal parts that are usually in one portion of the hot tub or spa are all pretty much self-contained in one location, and the plumbing part of it's all plastic and everything. But in the portion where they're all together, everything that's metal, metal fittings, all this type are all going to be bonded together. Okay, typically should come already from the factory that way. So really, not a whole lot you need to do for that. Okay, unless you add some type of metal fitting or attach it to the actual hot tub or spa, then you're going to have to bond it. Okay, next, metal parts of electrical equipment associated with the spa or hot tub water circulating system, including pump motors, unless part of a listed, labeled, and identified self-contained spa or hot tub. Okay, so what this means is that if you have some type of remote pump because you have this unit that's maybe it's the packaged deal where you have the different components that connect together that aren't all under the same frame, that are all part of a self-contained unit. This one serves to remind you that, look, if this is a piecemeal where you buy the parts, you put the hot tub in, the pumps are over here remote so that they're not right there. So it's a very, some people say a very clean look. Then you still got the pumps. It's still involved with the circulating water. So it has to be bonded to the metal parts that are over at the actual spa or hot tub, even though the pumps may be remote. Now, if it's designed in a listed unit that is all listed, labeled, and identified as a self-contained, I mean, you bought it. It's all its own framework, everything. You just bought it and they just dropped it right there. Then all of that's going to be bonded together through to its evaluation before it's shipped to you. So you can recheck it, but most of the time, inspectors not going to get involved in that. They're not going to start looking for these bonded pieces because typically all the metal's at one location near the access panel. And then typically, if you have like spas that I used to have, PDC spa, is the motors are underneath the steps. So they're not underneath the spa. A lot of them are. But these were right. So you move the steps and there were the pumps. Well, they had bonding lugs on all of these pumps. And so they were bonded, looped through all these pumps. And then it was an 8 gauge. They looped through all the pumps and they take that over and it bonded to the frame of the actual controller that was underneath the hot tub and did it that way. And of course, there was an equipment ground that ran with the circuit conductors that were coming into this bond hot tub. So you had that indirect connection between the grounding system of the building, and you also had that connection to bond all these parts together so they were all were at the same potential around the hot tub. So that was done, even though those motors were not really underneath the actual hot tub. They were kind of adjacent to it, but it was neat because that allowed for easy servicing of motors, changing them, shutting them off, moving them out. If you had to service them, you didn't have to get underneath the hot tub or spa in this tight, confined space. Not every manufacturer does it that way, but PDC spas used to do theirs that way. Now, I don't know if they do that anymore. That's 20 years ago. But they were pretty top of the line spa at the time. Pretty revolutionary when they first came out. All right. Let's go back to the code. All right. Next, it says metal raceways and metal piping that is within 5 feet of the inside wall of the spa or hot tub and are not separated from the spa or hot tub by a permanent barrier are going to have to be bonded. So guys, where you put this spa or hot tub, if you've got any raceways, if you have any metal piping of any type, not just electrical, any metal piping on a fence, any type of metal piping, if that is within 5 feet of the inside wall, you're going to have to bond it. You're basically not creating an equipotential bonding grid. What you're doing is you're just tying all of these raceways or metal piping that may be within 5 feet. I don't know how often you'd run into that, but if you did, they all have to be tied so that they all act as one, creating their own issue. It's not like the perimeter, but in a sense, it's like an equipotential bonding grid. It's bringing everything to the same potential. And so especially any piping, okay, that is within 5 feet. Best thing to do is make your life simple, unless you're space prohibited, is to locate your spa or hot tub in a location that you're not going to be within 5 feet of anything. Okay, switches, metal piping, metal raceways, nothing. Make sense? Okay. All right. Next to the last one, next to the last one is this one. It says all metal surfaces, folks, that are within 5 feet from the inside wall of the spa or hot tub and that are not separated from the spa or tub by a permanent barrier has to be bonded. All metal surfaces. So again, this could come into play. I'm just being extremist here. I could have a metal siding on the side of my house. I don't know how you do this because the metal siding is usually not connected, right? But if I located my spa or hot tub and it was within 5 feet of the inside wall and I had metal surface, metal siding, I'm just saying, then I'm going to have to bond that metal siding. And if those pieces aren't connected together, then, I mean, you might get an AHJ that says, look, just just put me run a bond wire over to the metal siding that's over. They're interlocked or connected together. That's fine. I just need to bond it. It's within 5 feet. You might be saying that's stupid. I don't make the rules, folks. Well, technically I do, but we don't make them on Code Panel 5. We just, in Code Panel 17, we just kind of present it. But you could have those metal surfaces. So you could have, this is very similar to what we do, right? For the equipotential bonding within 5 feet for the pool, right? Part 2. If we have a metal awning, we have metal window frames, all this type of thing. So if I have any metal surfaces that are within 5 feet, I got to bond it. Keep things away from it unless you're spatially limited, and then you got to do what you got to do, that type of thing. But other than that, it's pretty straightforward. And you say, well, how do I do it? Well, you got to figure it out. Drill it, tap it, whatever you got to do. Use a connection 250.8 method. You got to do it. Okay. Now there is an exception. Don't worry. There is an exception. The exception says, look, small conductive surfaces that are not likely to become energized, such as air and water jets, drain fittings, those little clamps that might be on the hoses and tubes, that type of thing. We're not connected to metallic piping, towel bars, mirror frames, and similar non-electrical equipment shall not be required to be bonded. Okay? Get what I'm saying? So, small conductive surfaces not likely to become energized, such as air and water jets and drain fittings, where they are not connected to metallic piping, towel bars, mirror frames, and similar non-electrical equipment, shall not be required. So those little teeny components are not going to be required, okay? But if you have a metal towel bar, okay, it's not what it says that you don't have to connect it to a metal towel bar. It doesn't say that. It says the small conductive surfaces not likely to energize, such as air and water jets and drain fittings, were not connected to metallic piping, towel bars, mirror frames, and similar non-electrical equipment, shall not be required to be bonded. Okay? So that's not saying you don't have other metal things that are within that 5 feet that have to be. It says any metal surface. It's just saying, you know what, those little fittings that may be metal that's going to connect a hose clamp to a jet or something like that. And most of the jets, by the way, that I see are all plastic. The only thing that would be metal is inside of it. Sometimes the clamp that would go to hose the water hose to the actual jet, sometimes that can be a metal stainless steel clamp, that type of thing. Well, that's the kind of stuff. You don't need to bond that kind of stuff. That doesn't make sense. Okay, but the aluminum siding, a metal towel rack that you place within 5 feet, yeah, you're gonna have to bond it. I'm just saying. Code is the code. Okay. All right. I mean, you can argue it all you want, but it's in black and white. All right. Next. Okay. Let's see here. See if we get some reprieve from this. Number 5. It says non-current carrying metal parts of electrical devices. Okay. So this is the non-current carrying metal parts and controls that are not associated with the spa or hot tub that are located within 5 feet of such units. So again, non-current carrying metal parts of electrical devices that, not part of the spa, just other pieces of equipment, okay? Like when we say non-current carrying, basically that is the frame of it. For example, a disconnect, a metal box that's used as a disconnect, the metal box is the non-current carrying component, okay? So that is what we're talking about. So if I have any other electrical equipment that is non-current carrying, but it's metal, means it's not designed to carry current. It might under a fault condition, but it's not normally designed to carry current. If that is within 5 feet, then we have to bond it. Okay? So, yeah. Just be careful where you put your stuff. That way you don't have to run into that. Okay? Now, what are the methods of doing this bond? Okay? E, right here. Methods of bonding. Well, it says all metal parts associated with the spa or hot tub shall be bonded by any of the following methods. Well, I can have the interconnection of threaded piping and fittings. That could be done through pipe connections threaded into each other. That's fine. Metal to metal mounted on a common frame or base, probably what I see mainly in most of the hot tubs and spas where it's wood, but there's a separate like a cage area where they're going to mount the controller and the sanitation or the pumps. Everything is usually connected together. Or in my case with the PDC spas, it was this one, a provision of a solid copper bonding jumper, insulated, covered or bare, not smaller than 8 gauge, okay? Now, it says bonding requirements in part for spas and hot tubs are similar to part 2 of 680, except that equipment mounted on the common frame or base with a metal-to-metal contact is an acceptable bonding method. Okay, so basically what that means is when you get those self-contained units, typically things will be mounted on a frame. Now, in mine, the only reason they ran an 8 over to the pumps because they were remotely away from that frame that held the controller, the sanitation pump. It's just basically a frame where they mount everything in. So that's all bonded together due to the mounting, okay? Well, these pumps were isolated. And so that's why they had to run an 8 gauge over to it and run it through lugs. And there was a lug on each one of the motor, ran it through each one of those, and that was it. And that met that requirement, okay? Grounding. Grounding. Okay, it says the following equipment shall be connected to an equipment grounding conductor, okay? All electrical equipment located within 5 feet of the inside of the pool set. So if you have any electrical equipment, this is a no-brainer. It's got to have an EGC. Hopefully it does with all of that equipment anyway. It's got an equipment grounding conductor to facilitate the operation of the overcurrent protective device. No-brainer there. It says all electrical equipment associated with the circulating system of the spa and hot tub. So all your motors, circulating pumps, obviously are going to have an equipment ground run to it. Now, there is an exception to 1 and 2. And that says electrical equipment listed for operation at the low voltage contact limit or less. Again, defined term. So this voltage limits are listed in Article 100 of the NEC. So go look at it. Okay, so the low voltage contact limit or less and supplied by a transformer or power supply that complies with 680.23A2. Okay, that is talking about separation and a barrier between primary and secondary and all that kind of stuff. Shall not be required to be connected to an equipment grounding conductor. So this might mean, for example, that inside of your spa or hot tub, you have the lighting system, which may be the transformer, may be in the control unit, and it changes it over. And at that point, it is going to be part of listed pool equipment type of thing. So it already has this listing, and it has a separation from primary, isolated, secondary. And what happens is, that's okay. It probably is not going to have an equipment ground anyway because it is low voltage, low contact values. And that's just going to things like some LEDs or something, little LED lights that may be in the mood lighting. If that's the case, then it's not going to have an equipment ground with that. And this is saying, well, that's okay. That's fine because it's integral. It's part of the equipment. It's low contact level limits, and that's perfectly acceptable. And that's what you're going to get in most of your modern spas today. Now, the reason this has to be here, by the way, is because not all spas and hot tubs are packaged units. Like I said, you could be building one that's integral to a swimming pool, and it's made out of the same sprayed in Gunite with the forming shells, but it's designed for just the hot tub area. Well, then the luminaires that get put in there have to meet the requirements in 680.23, just like they would be in Part 2 for a permanently installed pool. Same rules have to be met. Right? Those type of things. So that means you're going to have equipment grounds unless that lighting is supplied in that area by a system that would be through a transformer or power supply that's going to be at the low voltage contact limit. If that's the case, you're probably not going to get an equipment ground anyway on that circuit, especially from the secondary side out to the actual luminaire. So what do you do with it? It typically stops at the primary side. Okay? Makes sense? Because that's the circuit you're supplying it with, the branch circuit that you're taking it there. But not on the part that's going to go out to the luminaire that may be in the hot tub, for example. Makes sense? All right, so that's what we're talking about there. All right. Now let's get back here. Okay. Let's see. We're still in at 680.44. Now this is GFCI protection and special purpose. Okay. Again, remember the difference. Special purpose is over 150 volts to ground for the GFCI for the system, and the 130 150 volts to ground is the requirement for the GFCI. And then the special purpose version is, which is in 680.5C, that is for the over 150 volts to ground. Both are GFCI requirements, but again, depending on what voltage you're dealing with to ground, depending on what you're going to have. Mostly for you and me, the most installations you're going to deal with is going to be 122 40 volt applications. They're just going to be typical Class A GFCI. Okay. Now it says general. It says except as otherwise provided in this section. It says the outlets. Okay, this would be hardwire or cord and plug. Doesn't matter. Outlets is very broad. Okay, we're not talking about just receptacle outlet here. It's outlets, hardwired or cord and plug. Okay, it says except as otherwise provided in this section. It says the outlets that supplies a self-contained spa or hot tub, a packaged spa or hot tub, which comes in different pieces that you're going to connect together, which could mean in the ground. It could be in some type of framing work or whatever. It doesn't have an outside frame on it that you buy self-contained, okay? Or a field assembled spa or hot tub shall have GFCI protection complying with 680.25B if it is, again, 150 volts to ground, or SP GFCI if it is over 150 volts to ground, okay? So that's your general rule. So that's the GFCI protection. So this is typically why you'll get a maintenance disconnect, but the maintenance disconnect will also be GFCI protected in order to protect that hot tub or spa, okay? That's typically why you'll get it. So it's going to serve as the maintenance disconnect, but it's also going to serve as the GFCI protection. Typically what you're going to run into, okay? Next, so that is A, general. B, listed units. So it says if so marked, so this means if it's marked on the actual unit, it says if so marked, a listed self-contained unit or listed package equipment assembly that includes an integral GFCI protection for all electrical parts within the unit or assembly, means it's the pumps, air blower, heater, lights, controls, sanitizing generators like an ozone and whatnot, wiring and so forth, shall be permitted without additional ground fault protection. So you could have a self-contained unit that also has an integral GFCI. So that does not mean I have to have another one. That is fine. Perfectly acceptable. Especially when you get some of these applications where it's actually a higher end model that may be even built into the actual control panel. Okay. I would say that's probably rarer than most, unless things have changed. I don't remember any that I've installed that ever had the GFCI that was built into it. Now, you may have one that's built into the cord, but I've never seen one that's actually built into the assembly, okay? And that GFCI would have to provide power on this listed unit to everything, the pump, the sanitation, everything, the light, everything, okay? Air blower, circulator pump, everything, okay? And it just means that if it has that's built into it, inspector cannot force you to install another one. It's already integral, okay? All right? Now, I should say this. This does not mean that if I have a receptacle that is outside for a cord and plug connection, the receptacle requirements to be GFCI protected is a totally different rule, okay? And that is under 210.8a, and that applies to the receptacle. So it may already require the GFCI protection anyway. So it may be that would meet the requirement. Okay, cord and plug, if that's what it's built into the actual hot tub, and it's a cord and plug, then that meets that as the disconnecting means. It's all those type of things. So that receptacle, again, is going to be 6 feet away. So it depends on what you're dealing with, what situation comes into. But all this rule is saying is, look, if I already have GFCI protection integral to the hot tub or spa, I don't need to add any other. It's not prohibited from, okay? It's just permitted to not have any additional GFCI protection. But GFCI works fine in GFCI. The only problem is if one trips, the other one may not reset, so it can become a nuisance. So you've heard that happen in bathrooms before where they put multiple GFCIs on one circuit. It's going to work fine, but they may trip it and then not know where to reset it because it won't reset because it trips somewhere else or something like that. So it can be a pain in the butt to locate, right? But nothing prohibits it. They'll work fine that way, right? It's just saying for a listed unit, if it's integral, I don't have to have any additional GF ground fault protection. It's not required. All right. Next one is going to be talking about gas fired. So this is new. Okay, this is new for the 2023 is gas fired water heaters. And it says, well, the nuance here to new is the GFCI part. That's what's new. It says circuits serving gas-fired spa and hot tub water heaters operating separately from the spa or hot tub they serve, okay, and operate at voltages above the low voltage contact limit. Basically, it's say 120 volt igniter for this gas-fired spa and hot tub. If that's the case, then it shall have GFCI protection, okay? So that means if you have a gas-fired water heater, it is separate and it's being supplied by 120 volts because that would be above the low voltage contact limit, obviously. If that's the case, then that circuit has to be GFCI protected, okay? That circuit right there, okay? All right, I'm not going to talk about permanently installed immersion pools. Again, you can see cord and plug, all these kind of things, the heater requirements. I'm not going to get into that. It's pretty self-explanatory. It's not very long. So again, we covered that in my full episode of the multi-part series over on Fast Tracks Tube. Go check that out. So I went over today, and since something's not working and I don't have very many people here today, I'm going to skip the contest today and just say, have a great day, everybody. And we'll catch you tomorrow where we'll be on a totally different topic. And I'm sorry we had some kind of mess up this morning. And obviously people couldn't get on or still can't get on because of something that messed up. EV Muck strikes again. All right. Till next time, folks, stay safe. God bless, and we'll catch you on the next episode, Coffee Hour. Peace.